And welcome to the Moriah Nightly News on a Wednesday evening, July 8th, 2026. Being the producer and the anchor here. From the nation to Moriah, here are tonight's top stories. The top story abroad and on the national scene and international scene as the president is overseas for the NATO summit in Turkey is the question of whether the Iran war will resume full scale or not. There were talks tonight before going on the air that the U.S. military may strike again, but that is not quite clear at this point in time. Whether that will be the case, it's very much in the air at this point. It came after comments overnight that the president had called the Iranians scum and did not want to continue negotiating because he didn't see them worth negotiating. Apparently, my foreign policy advice had finally reached the president's ears because I have been saying that for the last month or so now. The AP noted that this was not clear because he did leave the door open to talks. He did not close the door on any negotiations, and that this very well could be a part of his strategy for negotiation. That very much is possible, as that has been one theory all along, that the president's rhetoric is a part of the strategy for negotiations. That might be the case, and we will just have to really wait and see. And that is about the best that I can offer on that, because it is an up in the air situation that seems to change not just by the day, but by the minute as well. We had noted, of course, a couple of weeks ago, the shortage in smart weapons in the American arsenal. That would be your Patriot missiles and THAAD missiles, those types of smart defense weapon systems. The president announced that he is authorizing a license to the Ukraine to be able to produce these Patriot systems. That was welcome news by the Ukrainians, with President Zelensky representing them there because of their fight against Russia. They very much welcome the technology in that battle. The president at the summit commended Zelensky and the Ukrainians in their fight against Russia, which very much was a different tone than previously. And he believed that the Ukrainians could produce them quickly. That was his language at the summit. So that is an interesting foreign policy development there, and very well could play out in American military favor, given the recent developments with the Ukraine and drone warfare and how well that has worked out there. Certainly some collaboration there might be of value for the American military. Breaking news before we had gone on the air tonight was the resignation from the U.S. Senate race in Maine by Graham Plattner, who had been that populist outsider candidate in the Democratic Party. Aside from his prior scandals with Reddit text messages and Nazi paraphernalia being tattooed on himself, he also had more recently been alleged of rape and sexual assault charges, or being alleged at this point, but they were serious enough that those within the party, like Bernie Sanders, urged that he drop out of the race. That seat was considered crucial to the Democrats being able to flip the Senate in November. So that will perhaps put them at an unclear disadvantage there. But of course, it was interesting to me that even Bernie Sanders would be telling him to drop out. That being said, as we will monitor what goes on in the coming days on the national stage for sure, I want to pivot to our main story tonight, and it is a break somewhat from the usual trajectory that I take for these stories, because it is staying on the national stage, but it is a direct tie-in to the energy debate in our region. I want to highlight this because it is a direct tie-in to the debate over solar panels and battery energy storage systems units in our region. Of course, that is one of the goals of this broadcast, is to highlight how national policy influences local events. The energy battle is proof of that. And even in Democratic strongholds, we might say, it is making its way down there, with Alexandra Faluso being on Long Island today, representing landowners down there, fighting the best units in their communities. But all of this began with the Green New Deal that I have alluded to in other broadcasts, and or the Green New Scam, as I've said it very much has played out to be. It is perceived as a somewhat of a post-COVID era or Biden era policy, but the real tie-in on the global stage really is to the United Nations Agenda 2030. Many do not know about that here in our region, and so that is why I want to highlight what this agenda is. And this was taken directly from the agenda's documents that the UN drafted for what this, basically telling you what it is. It's right on the internet in PDF form from the UN. A plan of action for people, planet, and prosperity. That sounds wonderful. Very utopian language there. All countries and all stakeholders acting in collaborative partnership will implement this plan. We are resolved to free the human race from the tyranny of poverty and want to heal and secure our planet. This is just a sample of what's in this document. Really, I'm not reading the whole thing, but just to give you a sense of it. Determined to protect the planet from degradation, including sustainable consumption and production of resources, sustainable usage of natural resources, taking urgent action on climate change. So this was signed at the UN in a UN meeting in a 3-day session of the UN between the 25th and the 27th of September back in 2015. So this was during the Obama years. And the states, more or less, that are signed on to this agree to participate in it. That more or less is the origin of your Green New Deal. The states are strongly urged, as it is, to refrain from unilateral economic, financial, or trade agreements, deals, whatever you want to call them, that, as they put it, would impede developing countries. So they are going for very much a utopian vision here. I use that word because that is the only word that I could think of to describe what this is trying to create, a globalist, and I have no other way to describe that because it very much is an interconnected vision of environmental, economic, social dependence on one another. Maybe collectivism would be another word for it, because if you read it, and it's publicly available, it is public knowledge, that is what you will find. Section 41, under the section for how they're going to implement this vision, notes full well the mobilization of financial resources as well as the capacity for building and the transfer, hate pop-ups, for building and the transfer of environmentally sound technologies to developing countries on favorable terms, including on concessional and preferential terms as mutually agreed. So they're going to give more preference to the developing world. Public finance, both domestic and international, will play a vital role in providing essential services. And then another, we acknowledge full well the role of the private sector, ranging from micro enterprise to cooperative and multinational civil society organizations, philanthropic organizations, and how this agenda plays out. That is all more or less directly quoted from this UN climate. This is from the UN Agenda 2030. It is at its core, again, a blending of economic, environmental, and social transformation into this futuristic vision of a globalized utopia. Again, all of your I wouldn't say classically liberal, but all of your aggressive ticket items, including your gender ideology, are lumped into this together for the Agenda 2030 to work. Now, interestingly enough, when President Trump came into office in 2025, he has rolled back U.S. support, and it was noted by the Associated Press in March of last year, March of 2025, that he had rejected or pulled U.S. support from Agenda 2030. And because this was ratified in 2015, and we're now 11 years into this in 2026. Actually, we would be now on the downhill slide of this agreement, with it only being 4 years away. So you can do the math there. And Edward Partney, and this was a minister counselor from representing the U.S. under the Trump. Not sure if he was connected directly to the Trump administration, but he represented the U.S. mission to the United Nations in any case, and had this to say about the Agenda 2030. He said that it advanced a program of soft global governance that is inconsistent with U.S. sovereignty and adverse to the rights and interests of Americans. And he also noted President Trump's course correction on gender and climate ideologies. And if you were to, again, look more deeply at it than what I gave you there, because I gave you a mere sample. It is very much digging deeply at collectivism as a whole and very much usurping, taking away any kind of individual rights, personal freedoms, personal autonomy, all of that stripped away by the United Nations Agenda 2030. You can read more about it right from the UN, as I did to prepare for this story, and certainly very glad that for any of Trump's shortcomings that I um, had noted previously, or actually I had intended to note, but that his rolling back of these agendas is very much welcome on my end, and should be for any American, whether you agree fully with the president or not. But what that means, regardless of your political party, is that you should take part in the process, because what goes on politically very much affects you, and who you vote for matters. So, with the fight here locally against this corrupt agenda, the meetings for our local officials are taking place tomorrow evening. There are two meetings tomorrow evening. The first is the Ticonderoga meeting, which is at 6 p.m. in the that's in the usual location, the Ticonderoga Community Building at 132 Montcalm Street. And the other meeting is in the town of Crown Point in their town offices for their website, doing the math to find that, to make sure, because I recalled that last month it was on the same night, and they do hold theirs on the same night. A bit of a scheduling issue for us to cover that. But in any case, that is tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. in Crown Point's town offices, and then again in Ticonderoga at the community building down there. It was interesting to note that for Crown Point, they had discussed, at least in the minutes for last month's meeting, the possibility of collaborating with other communities when it came to best research. So that was an interesting note in the minutes to the Crown Point meeting and what took place down there. Recall they have, as if I remember correctly, had put in a moratorium along with the one in Ticonderoga. That is just my memory being faulty there. So that will, in any case, though, those meetings are happening, and we will do our best to bring you the coverage from those meetings tomorrow evening. So that was all I had, although I did have some other things, but they were left out, I guess, in the prep time, as I got lost in the UN 2030 preparing for that story. So again, those meetings are tomorrow, and we will do our best to cover those. And then next Thursday will be the town board meeting for Moriah, as they are the third Thursday of the month, generally held at the courthouse. I know they had one at the Knights of Columbus for some reason, but as far as I know, it is back at the courthouse, and we will confirm that. So that is the Moriah Nightly News for this Wednesday evening. And be sure to like, subscribe, and check us out on Facebook, YouTube, and our new website is up and running. It is available there. The video, there is one video that is up there but the archives are not all connected to that, as all of our coverage of the renewable energy debate in our region and across the board is available on YouTube, that provides the archive for that, and in time should be connected to the website. That will take some time to go through and catalog that, because backlogging that takes a little bit of work. So that is the Moriah Nightly News for this evening. Thank you for watching. Good night.